Need additional tweaking for a track that's slipping in Mocha Pro? I'm going to show you a quick trick for using AdjustTrack and a little point track ML. I'm Grant K for Boris FX, and let's smooth this out. Now, just before we start, I would like to say that AdjustTrack should always be considered as a last resort. Usually just changing the track shape or a couple of parameters will get you a better result. But sometimes we just can't get it in the normal way. So here we are in Mocha Pro, and this could be Mocha Pro standalone or the plugin launched from your preferred host. We've been tasked with adding a logo on the skateboard, and the main track has been completed. The track looks correct, but let's set up the surface to ensure the logo will stick throughout the shot. Go to the initial reference frame for the track. You can easily spot this in the timeline controls. Turn on the surface as well as the zoom windows to help with positioning. Using the four corners, adjust the surface to place it on the top of the skateboard. Now it's easy to assume that the track is perfect. Let's perform a confidence check to see how well the surface is locking to the skateboard. Zoom into the viewer and activate the quick stabilize mode. We can play the frames to see what we have, but I would highly recommend slowly scrubbing through the frames to see the surface. The surface is locking onto the skateboard for most of the track. However, we can see a bit of drift at certain times. Many factors can cause drift. For example, motion blur, fast motion, the reference changing, and even track areas going on and off screen. I can't get a better track with this, so I have to break the emergency glass and turn to AdjustTrack. Let's turn off the quick stabilize mode. To adjust any track after the fact, go to the initial reference keyframe using the timeline controls. Next, let's switch to the AdjustTrack menu. For those of you that don't know, this is a secondary level of animation you can add to a surface to eliminate drift and other tracking issues. It builds on top of the tracking data. If you have really bad track data, you are going to struggle with AdjustTrack as well. There is already a tutorial on how to adjust the track manually, which I'll link in the description below. So we'll be focusing on Auto Nudge. To start adjusting the track, the first step is to set the points. Since this shot contains all types of transforms, including perspective, we'll select all the options and set the points. Looking at the viewer, you can see 4 new points for adjusting the track. For this example, we'll use these 4 bolts to help remove the tracking drift. To get a clearer view of where these points will go, turn on the zoom windows. Now let's move each point to define the tracking offset for the corners of the surface. Scrubbing the frames, the slipping becomes more evident as the current frame loses its reference with the reference points. Normally, we'd scrub through the shot and manually adjust each reference point to counter the drift. However, Auto Nudge removes all that hassle. Let's go back to the original reference frame. By enabling Auto Step, the AdjustTrack will nudge the points every 10 frames by default. You would adjust this depending on the severity of the drift. Next, we'll switch to the Point Track ML mode to use machine learning to assist in the adjustments. This gives each point more awareness of the surrounding area, which in turn creates a more successful adjustment. We can force the track to use a single reference with this checkbox. However, since the reference will change over time, it's not needed for this shot. Next, we have the supporting grids. If this section is grayed out for you, just select one of the reference points in the viewer. These options allow the Auto Nudge to have additional helpers around the main points. You can add per point, around the surface, or around the whole image. Let's increase the surface to 4 and scale the grid to get as much of the top surface as possible. By increasing any of these options, we are forcing the point track ML to look at the wider surrounding area of the track. This is useful to counteract motion blur or if the surface starts going off screen. The point track ML can use the supporting grids to keep the track locked in place. It's great to know that we have these options to focus the point track ML. All that's left to do is perform the nudge. Click the Nudge Forward button to analyze forward. And then return to the reference frame and nudge backwards to analyze the remaining frames. Mocha Pro takes care of the rest. It only takes a few seconds, but scrubbing the frames again, the surface is properly locked onto the skateboard. Our original track spline may be distorting, but the AdjustTrack controls are forcing this leverage to keep the surface locked in place. We can turn off the layer outlines to hide the spline and focus solely on the surface. After all, the surface is what we'll use to add the logo to the skateboard. This tracking data can be exported out of Mocha Pro or sent back to your preferred host for final compositing. If you want more AdjustTrack tips, let us know in the comments. We also have the official Boris Effects forums and Discord server for bigger discussions. Links in the description below. I'm Grant K for Boris Effects, and see you next time.